Davis.
Today we speak on behalf of our veterans and the 176,000 members of the public who have so far signed the petition to give those veterans protection against the vexatious legal pursuit of our brave heroes. Last week when I raised this in the House, the Prime Minister dismissed it as political point scoring. He's wrong. It's a matter of justice, a matter of ensuring that those who risk their lives to protect our citizens during the Troubles know the state stands behind them. And the Veterans Commissioners for Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, not naive people, issued a joint statement last week. They said, and I quote, "Inconsistent application of justice, particularly where it revisits incidents already thoroughly investigated, serves only to re-traumatise veterans and undermine public confidence." I agree with it entirely. It's exactly consistent with every veteran I have spoken to, and there have been a rather large number since February when I first raised this matter. But getting this right is not just a matter of historical justice. The legal witch hunt won't end in Northern Ireland. It'll cast a shadow over every future conflict that our armed forces engage in and undermine their abilities to defend us. Now, I am a strong advocate of human rights. Many here who know me, I think the only person in the House has defeated governments from both sides, both in the House and in court, on matters of human rights. So I take them extremely seriously. But this issue is driven more by politics than by human rights, by the exigencies of politics than human rights. And take the inquiry process that I think both members, the member intervened earlier and the Honourable Lady, referred to. I imagine, and as the Minister will tell us later, the Secretary of State will tell us later, I imagine that by reinstating the inquiry process, the government believes it's dealing with the implied Article 2 right to investigate purportedly unlawful killings. I imagine that's what they're trying to do. And indeed, The Guardian this morning, and as we've heard referred again, the Secretary of State was claiming it was protecting the right to investigate 202 murders of British Army soldiers. Really? I wonder if along with that goes an undertaking to give witness statements by 200 terrorists who did those murders, who, incidentally, I say to the Honourable Lady, were given pardons in the part of the peace process by Tony Blair some 40 years ago. You know? 423, I think, were released from prison with pardons, and approximately 200 so-called on-the-runs comfort letters. That's not this act, that's then, and it exists now and continues to exist now. Now, to continue to quote the Veterans Commissioners, "There can be no moral equivalence between those who served in uniform to uphold peace and the rule of law and those who sought to destroy it through acts of terrorism." Again, I couldn't agree more. The largest group of people killed in the Troubles by a vast margin were those murdered by paramilitaries, to use the current euphemism for terrorists, killed by terrorists. Of those 2,000 people, every one was a murder. An unlawful killing, to use the phrasing in the coroner's courts these days. An unlawful killing, every one. We don't need a court to establish that. And the number of those IRA murders that will be subject to inquiry on the current listing, we've got 33 listed, two out of 2,000. This is because the major driver for those inquiries is the IRA Sinn Féin efforts to hide their own barbaric acts behind a freedom-fighting facade, trying to rewrite history, with them as heroes and the British state as villains. That's why battles like Coke, Clonno, and very likely soon Glauchall feature so large in demands for inquiries, and the prosecution of long-retired, innocent British soldiers. All three of those actions were humiliating defeats for the IRA. But be clear, all of the IRA members who died in those exchanges, so-called victims in this context, were actively in the process of committing atrocities. They were trying to murder innocent people. At Coke, they planned to murder an off-duty UDR officer. At Clonau, they attacked the Coal Island police station with an armour-piercing machine gun, attempting to murder police officers inside. At Loughgall, they drove a bomb-laden digger to blow up a police station, and they were armed and ready to murder any survivors. All were armed, all were dangerous, all were intent on murder, and many of them had killed before, making them a fatal risk to our soldiers, a risk our soldiers had to cope with in split-second decisions. These are the people we're going to put on trial if we allow them to lose their protection that we ought to be giving them today. And look at the individuals in them, starting with Coke. The inquest heard about Michael Ryan. Ryan was probably responsible for many, many murders. I can cite two. He shot two UDR officers, one in front of little children on a crossing, and the other one in front of his 13-year-old son. That's the sort of people we're dealing with. And as for the IRA's greatest defeat, Loughgall, the weapons recovered at the scene had been used in over 40 previous murders. There's no doubt about that. 40 previous murders. And of the IRA members there, McKerney and Arthurs were both involved in the Ballygawley police station attack, which murdered a further two policemen. James Linar, who was nicknamed the executioner by the RUC, was believed to be involved in over 30 killings. 30 killings, including the cold-blooded assassination of an 80-year-old, largely blind and deaf, Sir Norman Strong, with along with his son in front of him. And as for Patrick Kelly, who was the leader of that attack, he led the self-styled East Tyrone Brigade, believed to have killed around 250 people before Loughgall. He also, by the way, took part in a second attempt to assassinate a brave UDR officer, Glenn Espy, who's sitting behind me here in the gallery, who fought off the assassins on two occasions, was shot twice and fought off IRA assassins twice. If they had not been stopped, all of these killers, if they had not been stopped, there is no doubt that those men would have continued their psychopathic campaign of murder. The IRA's campaign of violence was indiscriminate and extended far beyond the island of Ireland. And in the course of defending innocent civilians from those murders, it's not 722 if you include, as I say to the Honourable Lady, it's not 722 if you include the policemen involved and the UDR officers involved, it's 1,073 servants of the British state who were killed. This psychopathic behaviour is what the IRA is trying to equate the British government's actions with. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to equate the two. And of course nothing could be further from the truth. There's ample evidence of the army taking enormous risks to arrest rather than the safer option sometimes of killing the terrorists. Consider the arrest, not the killing of the Armagh sniper who killed 7 people, but he was arrested, not killed. The killers of the killers of Captain Westmacott, arrested, not killed by the rest of his patrol. Even in today's Daily Mail, the rescue of Bernadette Macaliski, who was there was an attempt to kill her by the UDA. British soldiers rescued her, even though she was effectively the political arm of the INLA. The clearest demonstration of our real strategy is that whilst 1,073 British forces and soldiers and policemen were killed by Republican terrorists up until 1994, 145 paramilitaries were killed in the same period, compared with 428 taken prisoner. So 3 or 4 taken prisoner for every 1 killed. And by the way, 7 British soldiers or policemen died for every IRA person who was killed. That tells you the strategy. That tells you what the IRA are trying to reverse. Of course.
Did you not, therefore, I want to say, to marvel at the remarkable restraint shown by British soldiers, no matter whether they were officers or people from wherever across the UK, in dealing with this and never once stepping over the mark in the regard to these cases?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, the phrase I would use is heroic restraint, because restraint under those circumstances, putting your own life on the line and the life of all your comrades. That's what's going on there. That's the decision that's being taken, that's being challenged today. And so that's right. He's right about that. He's absolutely right about that. And of course, it was institutional. It wasn't simply heroic soldiers, or of course it was that. The yellow card system demanded restraint, warnings and proportionality. Every time a British soldier killed a paramilitary, it was subject to rigorous judicial scrutiny. And when that process failed, we ensured the matter was properly investigated. Remember the Savile inquiry? Yeah. £200 million, 12 years, 5,000 pages. What other country in the world would review its own behaviour in that way? I'm not going to actually cite all the options, but just think in your own minds. Some of our allies who would perhaps not have gone quite that far to give everybody justice. Our soldiers have been held to the highest standards of law. And yet our government is rewarding this by effectively threatening them in their retirement. And that's not a proper reflection. And remember, we've been talking about human rights. That is not a proper reflection of their human rights, because they are human beings too. They have human rights. So we should remind ourselves that human rights are founded in natural justice. They don't spring out the air. They're founded in natural justice. In this process, there is no natural justice for our brave veterans, nor, frankly, for the real innocent victims of the Troubles. This process doesn't give either of those. Now, the government is understandably, and the Secretary of State knows I have some sympathy for his position in this, is struggling to find a solution to this. Let me tell him the criterion for success, because it's very simple. It must completely remove the threat of prosecution from our brave veterans who have served their country well, who have already been through a process of judicial review of every action they took. If the government repeals the Legacy Act without a robust replacement, and that's the key point really here today, a robust replacement, if it replaces it without a robust replacement, we hand the narrative back to those who seek to rewrite history. Now, I accept that mistakes were sometimes made, and when they were, those responsible must be held to account, and that has been done. But we must not allow politically motivated lawfare to dismantle the very capabilities that make our armed forces precise, lawful, effective, and amongst the best in the world. What young person today would sign up to serve knowing that their reward could be a courtroom in retirement?
May I intervene?
I'll give way, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
What young person today? No, I will not. No, sorry. What young person today would sign up to serve knowing their reward would be a courtroom in retirement? It's through our soldiers' measured actions that the IRA's barbaric campaign of terror was confronted and diminished. The number of people killed by the IRA fell by 94% between the periods of 1970-74 and 1994-98. 94%. That outcome matters. Their intervention prevented countless more deaths. I've called on the government now 6 times to end this campaign of retrospective parody of justice, but have received so far no meaningful answer. And I hope we get one today. But I'll finish by saying this, Mr. Chairman. Today we talk a lot about human rights. In the adjournment debate, I read a poem I first heard at a Remembrance Day service, a regimental Remembrance Day service. And I'll read it again today because I think it's extraordinarily relevant. And I quote, "It's the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us the freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who has given us the freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the peace camp organizer, who has given us the freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier who serves beneath the flag, whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. It's the soldier, not the politician, who has given these freedoms." Those who freely talk about human rights would do well to remember that our rights, our law, our democracy, our nation were protected by the very veterans who are at risk today. So let us all make one promise, that no British soldier will ever again be abandoned by the very nation they have so bravely protected.